Hello, and thank you for joining us today. Before we get started on this conversation about shifting language and how the words we use might affect the way we think and feel and move forward in our grieving process, I want to share this little disclaimer that the information and resources that are shared are not intended as and shall not be understood or construed as medical or health advice. Information shared is not a substitute for medical advice from a professional who is aware of the facts and circumstances of your individual situation. So I'm Sandy Walden, and I am joined today by the amazing Kristie. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Sandy. How
I'm
are you
so
today?
wonderful, and I'm better because you're here.
I love you.
Ah, and I love you too. And it's kind of interesting because even as we were chatting a little bit before we hit that little magical record button, we were in a bit of a conversation about words and how they shift the way we think and we feel. And this is a big deal when we're going through anything that's emotionally charged, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And it might be an emotional charge that's profoundly sad. Um, it could be grief because that's basically that's why we came together, the grief experience and the people we work with and the losses. But it also has to do with overwhelm and anxiety and profound sadness. And also when we're making efforts to get through something and we might be angry, we might be excited, which lives right next door to fear. Um, those charged times. What do we do with language, and how does shifting our language support us? So,
Well, for me,
Kristie, yes,
I
that's
was
what
gonna,
I was going to say. Please tell me
so,
what you think.
well, when my son first passed away, I was right next to him, and my thought was, let him go. He's miserable because did not have a happy life, and he was sick all the time, and it was really hard. And then I felt kind of relieved when they told me they couldn't bring him back because I really knew because for 3 days been blue from doing drugs and he was having respiratory failure. He wouldn't go to the hospital. So sitting next to him on the floor while he was, taking his last breath, thoughts ran through my mind like, I should have been able to save him. I should have. And I couldn't turn him over because he was too heavy to do CPR. And as we were talking about, we should ourselves because we're only living in the moment and there's only things that we can do. There's only a certain amount of things we can do. I could call 911. I could have the fire department here and the police here, which I did. Um, but it was very overwhelming. And for a lot of times, I kept telling him when they brought him down to the bottom of the stairs, I had to say, I'm sorry, I couldn't save you this time because I saved him out of everything in his life. And I just told him I couldn't save you this time. Um, but I also found myself being very negative with myself for a while. And I know the negativity goes out into the universe, and the universe comes back and says, if you're going to say those things, you're going to feel that way. And then your life's going to go that way. So I have to say,
So, I'd like to unpack that a little bit more too. So, the shoulds. There used to be a wonderful client who used to come to my office, and she used to tell me, I'm going to have hats and T-shirts saying, "Don't should on yourself." The shoulds feel like they're an additional burden that we put on ourselves or others when we do the shoulds. So I want to acknowledge that you have made such great strides in letting go of the shoulds, and it's an ongoing effort for most of us.
Mhm.
It's an ongoing effort for most of us, isn't it? So the other thing that you just said that I find really interesting, and I'd like to ask you to talk more about, Kristie, is negativity. So when we think about how we're feeling, do you see it as negative to say, I am so sad today? I'm so upset today. I can't sleep today. Do you see that as negative or do you see that as something else?
But when I say I can't sleep, I'm not going to be able to sleep because I'm telling myself I can't sleep. So I have to do things that will, because I do have a sleeping issue since my son passed. And so I have to do the things that I know work. And sometimes I forget. Sometimes I do breathing exercises and that puts me to sleep. Sometimes I put on like a thunderstorm on my sound and that helps me sleep. And I can say like a prayer over and over again and I'll fall asleep. I can read a book. There's a lot of different things. And I know a lot of other people use different ways of falling asleep. But when you say I can't do something, you're not going to be able to because you're telling your mind you can't. And once you tell your mind you can't, then you can't. And
And
then what happens is you send that out into the universe and you can never do it because now the universe is going to make it so you can't. Sorry, Chicago hands are going.
that's okay. I talk with my hands all the time. It's just what happens. So when I think about those things, and that's a lot of the work that I do when I work with grief clients or when I'm certifying coaches, is to talk about gently shifting without making someone wrong. So it's particularly when we're in the earliest moments, days, weeks, even months of profound loss of any sort and grief. We're particularly talking about the grief and the experiences coming from losing someone that we care about, someone who has died. But that also can be reversal of health, financial loss, losing your home, a friend, a pet. Any sort of loss can absolutely bring about grief. And when we're in those earliest moments, days, weeks, it can be too much to, for me, it can sometimes feel like too much to think about another option.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, when you work with someone, do you find yourself saying, you said you're sad? I get it. Let me sit with you.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I don't mind just sitting. I don't mind. I have lunch on Friday with a friend of mine who lost her son, and it's not quite a year yet. Um, but she talks about her son consistently. And I listen because there were people that listened to me consistently. And she told me she hasn't cried yet. And I said, do you know why? And she goes, I don't know. And I said, well, um, the tears will come if they're supposed to.
Like
So,
that.
uh, yeah, I can't tell somebody they're supposed to cry or not cry. I know that for me, what happens to me is I get this big hole inside of me, and then I know I gotta cry, but I can't cry because I'm in some place I can't cry. Um, I walked into the treatment center where I'm going to be working, and I saw these parents bringing their young kids into this treatment center, and it hit me hard. And I had to swallow my tears because I'm going for an interview. And I just reminded me of me dragging my son to all these treatment centers. And even though he wanted to go and he was signing himself in, he wanted me to be there with him. And I was there with him. But those moments pop up and we don't know they're going to happen. I bought a t-shirt online. It has his name on it. And I opened it up and the tears just started coming out of me. And my friend was there and I told her, I'm glad you were here, nobody else.
Well, and that's not negative, is it? That's just feeling
No.
this true emotion and honoring it. So that's something I think can be really confusing, that sometimes someone who is in deep pain feels like it's not okay to acknowledge that pain.
Yeah, I always say speak your truth. Words can wound, actions mean more. So you
It's
can
it
speak your actions.
Well, and it's about what we're doing with it, isn't it? Shifting some of that language allows us to shift our feelings, but it's about the timing, isn't it? And it's about not it's a, forgive me and all the jumbled thoughts, right? I feel like they're in a knot in my brain. So for instance, if I'm experiencing the worst day of my life, it's not going to be helpful for someone to say, well, look on the bright side.
Right.
Don't be negative. It is helpful for someone to say, I care. I
I'm
can't
here to
make this
listen.
better. I can't make this better. And I care about you and I'm here.
What do you need me to do?
Exactly. And so I just want to be really careful. And I know it's something you do very well, acknowledging where someone is without labeling those emotions. Because in my experience, it can be really painful for someone to say being angry is negative, being sad is negative, and they're just
They're
emotions.
just
They're not right
feelings.
or wrong. It's what we do with it.
Hmm. Right. So my grief, I turned it into helping others recover. And I have a lot of experience in that. I've been sober for 35 years, and I've worked with a lot of people, and I still go to treatment centers and I still help people at the treatment centers. And now I'm going to be working as a recovery support specialist, which is like I have something I wanted to do for so long. Um, but I was just interested in getting my son sober at the time. But now I can branch out and I can do it as a gift to him, a tribute to him.
Now, isn't that
Because
a powerful thing? What you just said, a tribute. It's a way of
mhm,
honoring him and you.
yeah, I mean, it's kind of like I know that I couldn't get you sober. Only you could get you sober, but I can go talk to other people and I can tell them your story too.
That's
So I
really,
mean,
really helpful.
it's like I tell my story and then I tell his story from my perspective. And I think it helps a lot of people. I had one guy that was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you told me that. That's how my mother must feel the same way. I have to get sober. I have to do the next right thing." Because we were talking in the beginning, watching your child do drugs for years and years and years, and they're killing themselves. It's the worst feeling in the world. You end up depressed. You end up just as sick as they are because they become your higher power because you're going to work on them. And it's just a big mess. And, as a mother, you love your child. And there's nothing. It's like the mission is unconditional love. I can't think of anybody that I've ever loved more than my child. And I still today have issues making connections because I have the fear of what if I get involved and they pass away? Can I take that? So I'm working on that, but I don't know if it's going to get better or not, but I
All
am
we know,
working on it.
all we know is that it'll shift and evolve and it will be unique for every loss.
Right.
We're at a different place, aren't we? So I just heard you be very deliberate about the language you used there. I didn't hear, I can't do this. I heard, I don't know what it'll be like.
I don't know what 10 minutes from now is going to be like.
Well, and isn't that interesting, because when I'm working with someone or when I'm certifying coaches, we talk a lot about, is it okay to imagine that it might feel a little bit better? Or is it okay to imagine shifting our language to this? Some of the things that you and I talk about is things like the I can't phrases. I can't possibly ever go to work again. I'll never be able to sleep again. I know I'll never care about somebody again. And those things are all very fair and valid feelings, aren't they?
Mhm.
And so if someone says those things to you, how do you receive them and how do you help them to open up to possibility? Not um as a directive, but to explore that may
Most,
be.
mostly with questions. I'm like, why do you feel that way? Could you say, I'm working on instead of I can't? My assistant's here. I'm working on is what I like to use for myself instead of I'm trying or I'm I'm, I can't. I'm working on it, like I'm not sleeping really well, but I am working on it and I'm trying to different avenues to be able to sleep. Um, and they're working. It's a slow go for me, but it's working. Well, good morning.
And that's so good. There's a little word, and I just love it. It is yet. And I obviously, if I'm working with somebody, I'm not going to say, you have to incorporate this. But if they might say, I can't sleep, I might ask, is it okay if we add yet? I can't sleep yet. Because it
Hmm.
holds out the possibility of getting better, doesn't it?
Yep.
And isn't it an amazing thing? I mean, you are a certified master grief coach, so you've worked with me through that program, and we've talked about some of this language. The word "and," these little words are so powerful, aren't they? I miss them so much, and I'm honoring him with the work I'm doing. when we
Right.
can when we can add something with an "and," it changes. It may not change the way we feel completely, but it opens up that possibility of shifting the way we think and feel about something.
I'm just the movie star over here. She's getting a massage.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
And that was one of the things that I had to do because I was single when my son passed. He was my only child, and I had to get an animal. And this was the perfect animal that came into my life, and he was a rescue. So, it's important for me to have an animal. The next person may not want one. But I feel love from this cat, like, you know, nothing else. And I know he's always here, and he doesn't go anywhere, and he doesn't like anybody else. People come to my house and he hides.
Well, and those things can shift all those things too, right? It's that it helps us to expand our reality.
Yeah, it's just, it's a day at a time, a second at a time. Sometimes I don't think I can breathe. Um, but we get through it and I get through it and I get through it knowing that, that things will change. Nothing's ever going to stay the same. One of those changes was losing my child, and it was the most horrific grief and pain I have ever had in my life. But I'm here today and I'm here to talk about it, and I can do things that in remembrance, I remember when he first got sober and actually stayed sober for a little while, I had him learn how to grow plants. So his plants on the back porch were getting huge. So I put them outside when he was still here. So two of the plants in his garden are ones that he started. And then I added to them. Whenever I miss him and I feel that hole in my chest, I go downstairs and plant a plant for him. So he has his own little garden. I got a rock painted for him and everything. And these are the things that I can do for him today that make me feel better, you know?
So it shifts those feelings. It doesn't take it away,
No.
but it sounds as though it calms things a little bit.
Yeah, and I can move forward. I can move forward a step at a time, but I take him with me. He's always with me.
See, I think that's a really big piece, Kristie, and it's something we've talked about before. And it's certainly something that almost everybody I've ever worked with will talk about, that if I feel better, I'm leaving them behind. And so for me, a big piece of working with people to shift that language and those feelings is to remember that you're bringing them with you as you are with your son's garden.
Hmm. Yeah, and I have pictures around and I talk to his pictures, and my son loved cats. I love dogs. He started me on the cat thing. And so I got a cat, in remembrance of him. And he needed to be rescued. He didn't want to be in a shelter.
So tell me why it's important, in your opinion, in your experience, and I know you have an awful lot of education to back it up as well. Why is it important for me not to say, I'm going to feel this way forever? Why is it important for me to consider saying something different than, I'll never heal. Why is that? Why should I open up to other language?
So this is only my belief and not everybody else's, okay? I'm putting it out there. So I believe that we're all energy and there's energy is around us at all times and everything's made out of energy and that we can connect with other people because we're all connected by a light inside of us. I also believe that what stop me if I'm losing track here, but if I keep saying things like, I'm not going to heal, I'm never going to heal, I'm not going to heal. I used to say, I don't know how to heal. I need help.
Ooh.
Um, and the thing is that I know that putting that negativity into the universe, it brings back everything I say. The universe gives me what I ask for. And when I say I'll never heal, then the universe goes, okay, so you're not going to heal. And then I don't heal. But if I say I'm going to work on healing, I'm going to talk to somebody, I need help, I'm going to call somebody, you know, then I take those actions and then I feel better afterwards. And then I don't say things like that. And that doesn't go out into the universe. And all these good things have happened to me since, I've learned how to talk to myself better. And instead of saying, that was stupid, I say to myself, that was silly. Or I did a silly thing. I had somebody I was working with recently who kept saying, that's stupid. That I had to ask her to stop saying stupid because one of the things that happened to me was my son used to do that to me all the time. You're stupid. The last text message I got from him said, I'm sorry, Mom, you're not stupid.
Oh, bless him.
I cannot listen to somebody continually say stupid, stupid, stupid. It affects me.
I give
And
you
I have to,
credit though for being able to speak up to say to someone and say, please don't use that language.
yeah. I mean, we have to be our advocates. If
And
we're
it
not our
matters.
yeah, go ahead.
It matters, because what I heard you saying aligns with what I believe, that there's energy in the language, and that it comes back to us, and it's there, and all these things seem to come together as far as I'm concerned, because energy is there, but and we can feel how we change when we shift that language to, I'm going to reach out for help, I'm doing the best I can, as opposed to being harsh or judgmental about ourselves. And also we know that our subconscious is hearing everything we say, and so when we're reinforcing things that are hurtful or unkind or judgmental, woof, and we
There
can
is so
notice.
much, there is so much in our subconscious that is from a long time ago that doesn't mean anything. And it makes us act today. And by changing our thinking in our subconscious, we reinvent ourselves.
Exactly.
And we have to retrain our subconscious, I believe.
Well, I like to think about the subconscious as a 4-year-old. And when I think about my grandkids who've all passed that point now, but holy cats, anything you say to a 4-year-old is pretty darn literal. It's pretty literal. And especially when something is emotionally charged, when we're profoundly sad, when we're deeply upset about something, or we're feeling so low, it just gloms on. It holds it like it's an absolute truth. And so we need to work to gently convince that 4-year-old, you know what, that was harsh. It didn't feel good. And you deserve better. I'm going to give you a
And
little
it'll,
love. I'm going to give you a little kindness. And so we can convince that 4-year-old, and mine's a particularly snarky, sassy little 4-year-old. She's a lot of fun. Um, but it takes time to let go of that, doesn't it? And what I hear from you is shifting our language is a big piece of that.
yes, it is. I'm just, still, I just believe that we're here for a reason. We're here to learn and to teach and to give love. I mean, that's what we do, right? And it's kind of like, um, I know that when my son passed, money never meant anything to me anymore. And I would freely give of myself to anybody that needed it. Um, and so it's kind of important to me that people realize that they can come to me and talk to me, and that wasn't go anywhere. And that's one of the reasons I became a reverend, because I don't want, I took an oath that things can't go anywhere anymore. I used to talk, but I don't talk anymore. And it's just important to me to know that people can come to me and we can just talk, and we can just sit next to each other.
And
You don't
that's
have to
building that
impress me.
trust.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
having someone you can trust in your life is super important.
And in my opinion and in my experience and what my own world and people I've worked with, when we can open up to that possibility. We have to learn trust. We have to learn kindness. And so we've learned lots of things in our world. Some were taught to us intentionally, some were not. Many things we've taught others, some intentionally, some not. And they haven't all been beneficial, have they? But if we
No.
can look at them just the way you said, I no longer use the word stupid. I replaced it with silly. And I've done something similar. I never really was big on calling myself stupid, but I had other really unkind things I would say. When I shifted it from, boy, that was a disaster, or that was terrible, or some of the other language I would use, to, wow, that's a lesson. I can check that box. Now I don't need to do it again. That's a shift, isn't it?
Yeah,
When
and
you went,
it's amazing. It's amazing how I've, like, for instance, 2 weeks ago, my HOA had the water shut off for my building. I turned the water on, went, ah, crap. So I went outside and started doing my errands. I came back, my sink had overflowed. It went downstairs into the lady's apartment downstairs. And I just stood there and went, oh my God, I wonder what her house is like. I'm just looking at the water pouring, shut the water up, pulled the drains up, and started cleaning up. And I hear her at my door, Kristie, my sink is leaking. She's really up in her age. And she she let it run for like 2 hours because she doesn't have long distance. And
oh,
she can't call my phone because it's 773. She can't call her daughter because it's a 520 area code outside of our area code. And she was stuck. And I'm like, it's okay, don't worry about it. But had that have happened before my son passed away, I would have been up in arms. Everything's a mess. Now I'm just sitting here going, well, I can't cook. What can I make? Because my stove's in the living room.
and those are the things, right? So when we're it's not about denying that something bad or hard or uncomfortable or many times truly devastating has happened. It's about, this
How
is
we
what it
react.
is, and I'm not going to pile on it. I'm going to acknowledge it and
It's
breathe
about
through it.
it's about how we react. That's all it is our reaction to whatever it is.
And it's not helpful to beat ourselves up for the way we reacted in the past,
No, but
especially
you
when,
learn from it. You have to
thank
learn
you.
from it.
And we have the opportunity to learn from it, don't we? When we're in those moments of something chaotic happening and unexpected, shocking, terrible, we're doing the best we can in that moment. So when
Mhm.
we revisit it through conversation or thinking about things, we can't change what happened, but we can change the way we feel about it.
Yeah, and by changing your reaction, you're changing your feelings. So I could have freaked out and had all kinds of anxiety. Oh my God, what's going to happen? Oh my God, oh my God. But here's what happened. I was supposed to start my new job on Monday. They're still working on this. They should be done with it. They should be done with taking it apart by Friday. And then next week, they got to put it back in. Now I called the job. They're starting me the week after, which means that I'll be here for when they put it back in. I didn't have to freak out over it. Nothing. It's going
Well,
to be done.
and even if the circumstances hadn't worked out for you,
But they
you
always do when you believe they will.
well, I'm not convinced of that, because I know an awful lot of things that have happened that I would consider a disaster. Um, but I have a choice. I have the opportunity to change the way I feel about something that was devastating as well. If devastation happened and I reacted what I might call poorly now, or I acted in a way that I'm not happy with, I can't change what I did, but I can change the way I'm talking and thinking about it now.
Yeah,
But
I
something
agree
else
with.
you said that I think is really important. You said, "I've learned to respond differently."
Hmm. It's taken a long time, but here I am, not freaking out. My kitchen's tore up. I don't
But
have a
don't you
job. I'm not making money.
but don't you think that that's a big deal? And it's not a small lesson. And it's something that I know you share with others that guess what? If this is something I can't change, the only control we do have is how we respond. So we can learn to respond in a way that feels better.
Well, I've had a lot of negative comments said to me when I've talked about my grief, and I just don't share any of that with them anymore. I do have specific people that I talk to who I know I can trust with my feelings because sometimes I just start crying, you know. I Watching your son pass away right at your feet is something that does not go away lightly. I ended up with ADHD and acute PTSD, you know, and sometimes I'll just feel that feeling that PTSD comes and I see pictures in my mind and it's not easy. I have to breathe through them and, uh, you know, it's getting better. It was really bad at the beginning. It's getting better. Um, you know, some of the things that I've seen inside my head, I just, the hardest, you know, the hardest. And I tried to be there for my son always, but there's only so much you can do. Once they turn 18, you know, you can't force them to do anything.
Or at any other point, right? And the truth
Right.
is, as you're telling this story, it wouldn't be helpful for you if I'd try and pour happy sauce on it.
Right. I mean,
When you can tell your story and somebody can listen to that, it helps us to let go of the judgment and to begin that healing. And it's a little at a time, isn't it? Sometimes it's more, but it's generally a little. Um, and that too, I think, helps us to reframe and shift,
yeah,
that we don't have to spend as much time in that moment if somebody lets us express it in a way that's safe and healthy.
right. It's just we have to find people we trust. It takes a little time sometimes. Sometimes the people you think you could trust, they're not there for you. I had a really good friend who lived in Chicago, and when I lived there, and he knew Alex, and when he found out that my son passed away, he hardly called at all because he couldn't listen to me. He'd lost a lot of his members of his family. And when I talked about my grief, his grief would come up and he didn't want to deal with it. So he just shut me down.
And it's worth
So
for us
you,
to remember he's doing the best he can too. It's just not
right,
what you needed.
right, exactly. So I still could talk to him, but I really knew not to talk about my grief. I talked to my cat about my grief.
And there's
He
no
doesn't
judgment
care.
there.
No, as long as he gets his little massages.
Perfect. That's perfect. So before we wrap up, what would you suggest to somebody if they're noticing some thinking that just sort of piles on for them? What sort of suggestion might you offer to someone um, to help themselves with what they're saying and thinking about themselves?
When they catch themselves in a negative thought pattern, what I taught myself was that every time I had a negative thought, I had to say three good things about myself. And I remember saying, I'm stupid, I'm fat, and I'm ugly. Well, those three don't even go together. They don't even connect. So I had somebody say, well, how do those connect? And then I had to think about it. And I stopped saying it a long time ago. And now I say, instead of I want to lose weight, I want to be healthy. So I watch what I eat. I want to be healthy, so I drink more water. I don't feel like putting on makeup today. I don't care. But I have to be, if I'm happy inside here, I can spread happiness through the energy that comes out of my body. Because if I'm sitting around moping and depressed, everybody's going to pick up on that. If I'm sitting here happy and feeling happy, I know my son will be happy that I'm happy. So I put that energy out, and other people come to me because they have, not just for grief coaching, but I've had more people in my life because that I express that better.
And so what I heard from that sort of nutshell is I'm choosing not to be unkind to myself. And when I notice it, I'm replacing it with kindness.
Mhm.
And it's not, I want to be clear that we're not telling anybody not to feel sad.
No,
It
not at all.
matters. It matters when you're sad that you can express that. But that's something else that I hear you do with true kindness. That if somebody's sad, come here and let me sit with you while you cry. We can be together. And the point is to let it be released. And that feels better too, isn't it? Shifts are not always going from being profoundly sad to walking out chuckling. It might
Right.
be lifting that sadness a little bit, but that's being kind to yourself, isn't it?
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, it takes a while when you have the devastation like I had, and to just pick myself up some days and get out of bed. But I did it anyway. There were days that I went without a shower for like 4 days. I didn't even know 4 days went by. Um, and I know that when I went to get my cat, I went in there and I had picked a Russian blue. I wanted a Russian blue, and they're hard to find in shelters. And so there was a lot of reasons I wanted that. But when I got to the shelter, it was only 2 weeks after my son's memorial. And I bent down to pet a cat and I fell over. I went to pet another cat and it bit me. And I looked at my friend and I said, I just can't do this today. And she goes, what about a Russian blue? And the lady goes, we just got one. And that's how I ended up with him. Now, the thing is I collect dragons. I have dragons all over my house, and his name is Dragon. He came here with that name. So it's meant to be. And things like that continually happen to me. So I know my son's around. I know my son's around because he helps me get through every day.
And that helps shift things too, doesn't it? Because it expands the awareness and it reminds us that our world didn't end when this profound sadness happened.
Right. We live, we reinvent ourselves and continue to live. And I tried many little things. Like I tried planting plants, but I don't like a lot of stuff around the house. Like I lose my glasses, I can't find it because there's too much stuff around the house. So then I tried crystals, and then I did resin, and I really love resin, except now it's all over my house. It's on my granite countertops, it's on my microwave, and we don't even want to talk about it. So I haven't done resin for a while until I got a new table, which I got yesterday for free. And I put my synthetic things down, and now I can do my resin again when I get my gloves in the mail.
I love it.
But I've learned these things. It's taken a while, you know. It's three and in April it'll be 3.5 years that my son's gone. But you got to really work at it, you know. And you can't. To me, you cannot like listen to what other people tell you. You should be, you should be, you should be, you should be over it by now. That's what I had to listen to. What do you mean I should be over it? I was with my son for 27 years. It's going to take 27 years to get over it.
Well, and the shoulds are
But I can heal. I
the,
can heal.
those shoulds are so harsh and judgmental, and I don't believe they're usually intended that way, but it's often the way we feel, isn't it? And so if we can just shift that, I'm doing the best I can.
I think when somebody says I should, it's because they don't want to hear it most of the time.
And often they're trying to offer advice that it's well intended, but that doesn't mean it lands in a way that's helpful.
Right.
And
I
so
just need you to sit with me. I just need you to sit with me and let me cry and know that you're holding my hand.
and that too, Kristie, is shifting it, isn't it? From please don't tell me I should, can we
Mhm.
do this instead? That makes sense. I'm so glad you were here with me for this conversation, Kristie. Kristie, can you tell people a little bit about who you are and how they can contact you? And if they don't need to write it down, because I'll also have it in the description.
Yeah, my name is Kristie Figueredo. You can reach me on Facebook under Kristie, that's Kristie, and then Schmid Figueredo. And then my phone number is area code 773-593-4312. I am in Arizona though, so please be careful with my hours. Also, my email is warriorangel061788@gmail.com.
I'm so glad you were here with me for this conversation, Kristie, and we're going to have many more. And I'd like to thank everybody who's watching or listening. I'm Sandy Walden. I am a Master Grief Coach. I offer Master Grief Coach certification and also grief healing courses because it's my belief that grief is a journey. And we go through the grief and we walk into healing. And it's so much easier when we do it arm in arm with others. So thank you for joining me. I so appreciate you, Kristie. You have a
I
wonderful
appreciate
day.
you, Sandy.
I wish everybody a day of peace and gentle healing. Namaste.
Namaste.